After almost a month of talks, Maryland Governor Larry Hogan and his wife were able to secure testing kits from South Korea that would allow the state to conduct 500,000 coronavirus tests after growing frustration with the Trump administration. The tests, which arrived at the Baltimore-Washington airport on an empty Korean Air Boeing 777 on Saturday, will help push the state toward its goal of testing 10,000 Marylanders a day. But the president criticized the move by Hogan during yesterday's briefing.
The governor of Maryland could have called Mike Pence, could have saved a lot of money. Look at these different places. That's Maryland right there. So could have saved a lot of money, but that's okay.
Did you go to South Korea for
No, I don't think he
testing
needed to go to South Korea. I think he needed to get a little knowledge would have been helpful.
Joining us now from Annapolis, the Republican governor of Maryland, Larry Hogan. He's also the chairman of the National Governors Association. Governor Hogan, thank you so much for joining us. So my understanding that you and your wife were able to secure these testing kits. She speaks fluent South Korean. Would there have been an easier way to get testing to your state? Is the president right about that? Are you missing some knowledge? And if there was an easier way, what would it be?
Well, if there was an easier way, we certainly would have taken it. You know, every governor in America has been fighting to get tests since the beginning of this crisis, and it's probably been the #1 problem in America throughout this entire crisis. You know, the president said that the governors are on their own and they should really focus on getting their own tests, and that's exactly what we did. His message changed yesterday. I'm not sure why, but we were very pleased that we had such tremendous success. This 500,000 tests that we secured is more than the top 4 out of the 5 states in America have done in total from the beginning of this crisis. So it's going to make a huge difference in our state. Today is a tough day. We're now in the region here passing 20,000 cases and 1,000 deaths, and these 500,000 tests are going to help us save the lives of thousands of people.
And is that an avenue that you plan to use again? Is this an example other governors should follow? What's the avenue for states to get more tests? Because that's our way through this. Unless someone has some other scientific way, we're basically flying blind.
Well, the testing is critically important, and if you want to talk about trying to get states reopened, it's part of the president's own plan that a very important criteria is downward numbers, and to make sure that you have the testing and the contact tracing in place so that we can identify the people that are sick and have the virus. You can't do that without adequate testing. Now, the federal government has taken some real positive steps in that direction, and they're ramping up. They're using the Defense Production Act to get swabs, and they're helping on trying to identify some labs where you can help the states. But states have been competing on the open market and the domestic market and the international market throughout this entire crisis, competing with each other and with the federal government. And I'm not sure it should have been that way, but that's the way it is. That's the way the president said it had to be. And so that's what we were operating under. I was very pleased. My wife, who was born in South Korea, we have a very good relationship with President Moon and the First Lady of Korea, with the ambassador here. And we worked really hard to get this done. And I want to thank the people of the Republic of Korea for their assistance, these great companies. And it's going to help the people in my state.
Willie.
Hey, Governor Hogan, it's Willie Geist. It will sound extraordinary and perhaps dumbfounding to a lot of Americans listening that you had to take advantage of a relationship you have with the president of South Korea because your wife is Korean American, because she was born outside Seoul. That's the way you got 500,000 test kits. Other governors haven't been able to get the testing they need. What is your understanding of the way this should work so that you don't have to rely on your connections in South Korea to get people tested in your state? What should be the relationship between the federal government and the states in terms of getting testing going?
You know, it's at this point in the crisis, it's hard to go back, and I'm not sure how productive it is to Monday morning quarterback and to point fingers about what should have happened a year ago or a month ago or a week ago. We're just dealing with the situation we're in, and And what we did, and what I think most governors are doing, is just we're doing what we have to do. And this is exactly what, I mean, the president has told us to do. He said just yesterday, he was saying that the governors are responsible for this. They're on the front lines. We should just get it done. And then we did get it done, and then we got criticized. So I'm not sure how things could be different, but the federal government is assisting us. We had a great conversation yesterday with the vice president and the president's own coronavirus task force. That went very well, and then somehow it went off the rails yesterday in that press conference, but I have no idea why.
Yeah, there's actually been audio release, Governor, of that phone call that you had with the vice president, not just you, but all the governors, and it was not reflected accurately by the president in that briefing. Was that an acrimonious call? Was there conflict on the call? What did that go like?
Not at all, So I'm the chairman of the National Governors Association. The vice president and a number of the members of the coronavirus task force made presentations. I thanked the vice president for his leadership. I thanked the president's team for all of their hard work. I complimented them on all the progress that they had been making recently on swabs and PPE and on ventilators. And I said we appreciated the information that they sent out to the governors on the testing labs that were in our states. And then I simply pointed out that the information they sent to us in Maryland, most of the labs on that list and on that map were actually federally owned labs. And I think that's the president showed that in a press conference and basically said, we didn't have to go to Korea because look at all these things we have in our state. Well, they aren't tests. They're just labs that don't have any tests, and they're all federally owned labs. So we've been trying for more than a month to get access to use labs like NIH, with no success. But yesterday, the vice president and the president committed to allowing the state of Maryland to use those federal labs, which we're very appreciative of. We now have the tests, they have the labs, and that should be a great solution. We should be able to now start to get to work together.
And the president at that briefing accused you of really not understanding what's going on. I want to ask you, as you said, you are the chair of the National Governors Association, about what's happening around the country because you are in such close contact with all the other governors, both Democratic and Republican. A lot of people focused this morning on the state of Georgia, which has announced on Friday it will begin to reopen some parts of its economy. I know you're not the governor of that state, but as you look at the way Governor Kemp is going about things, Governor Lee in Tennessee, Governor McMaster in South Carolina, how will you as a governor know when your state is ready to send people back out into public, to send people back to work, to send people in restaurants? What's the standard for you?
So we have had a really smart coronavirus response task force has been working for weeks on a very detailed plan, which we're going to roll out by the end of this week, at least a roadmap of how we're going to go about that. We're going to open up as soon as we possibly can and when it's safe to do so. But the president's own plan says you can't even begin to think about phase one until you have a downward trend in the numbers on hospitalizations and deaths for 14 days. We have numbers going up. So we're not quite there yet. But we have a very detailed plan that we've been working with some of the members of the president's own task force and his former FDA commissioner, Scott Gottlieb, and some of the smart folks from places like Johns Hopkins, University of Maryland Medical System, along with some top business leaders. We're going to open up our state as soon as we can because I want to get people back to work. I want our small businesses back open again. But we're not going to do it at a time when it's going to be endangering lives. So we're going to roll out a very detailed plan. And all the three governors you mentioned are all friends and colleagues. But I can't speak to exactly what the situation is in their states. But the president said each state has to make their own individual decisions based on the situation on the ground in their states in their own time frame. And that's exactly what governors are doing.
All right, Governor Larry Hogan, thank you very, very much. We look forward to talking to you again very soon. An update now.